You can take a girl out of software, but you can't take software out of the girl. So the software ethos always stayed with me, and that has been a part of my scientific identity.
That's Sangeeta Bathia from Imperial College in London, and she's one of the 3 guests I invited for this week, along with Deborah, Udoh and Jyoti Bhogal. All 3 of them got a fellowship from the Software Sustainability Institute in the UK this year, 2025, and in the next few minutes we'll be taking a look at what their fellowship is all about. It's almost the end of the year and the end of this season of Code for Thought. There'll be one more episode to follow though before the holidays, and it will be a German language episode, but more about that later. It's been kind of a crazy year, yet again, on so many different levels, and I thought I'd end the season with something hopefully a little bit uplifting. And in my view, talking to the 3 SSI fellows, Deborah, Udoh, Jyoti Bhogal and Sangeeta Bathia, does the trick. Spread around the globe, with Deborah in Nigeria, Jyoti in India and Sangeeta in the UK, they want to use their SSI fellowship to further training, public health or build a professional network. And they do that with considerable drive and energy, as I hope you'll find out. Let's start with Deborah. Deborah is no stranger to the community of research software engineers. Some of you may have met her at various UK RSE conferences, and in fact at the 2024 conference in Newcastle, she was one of the 2 engineers singled out as an emerging voice by the Society of Research Software Engineering in the UK. Deborah is also very busy in the open science community, and I saw her earlier this year at FOSDEM, the annual open source software fest in Brussels, where she co-organized a developer room for open science. So Deborah is wearing several hats at the same time, to which she added one more this year, the SSI Fellowship.
A 2025 SSI Fellow, which is awesome. Since the last time we spoke on the first podcast, I've become an SSI Fellow, but I still maintain my day job for OLS as a community manager and web developer. And besides all of that, I'm a nurse in Nigeria.
That sounds like a full-time job. All of that actually sounds like a full-time job. So you're having 3 full-time jobs now.
Yeah.
Is the work that you do for OLS, the Open Life Science Network, is that somehow related with your SSI fellowship? Or is that completely independent?
No, they are 2 separate aspects of my life. The SSI Fellowship is independent of the work that I do for OLS.
So what is the SSI Fellowship that you applied for?
So the project is the one that I had hinted on the last time we spoke. It's called Precedes or Research 101. That's the more obvious name. So what we're doing is we're building a beginner research training curriculum, but we don't just want to build a curriculum. We want this to be done by the people who would benefit the most from using the curriculum. So not just building the material, but it's more about building a community of people who build the material and then maintain and use it.
The curriculum for researchers who code specifically, I guess.
Exactly. So it's a curriculum for both aspiring researchers who have never had any experience with research, and then it progresses like a journey, right? So after one step learning about research, we bring in concepts in research software, which is an aspect of doing research work. And so it ties together the entire span of career from when you have no idea what research is to finding out about the world of research, and then all the tools, hardware and software that you would use for research. The curriculum is quite robust and covers all of that.
All right. Have you built the curriculum or the start of the curriculum already with other people, or are you still in the process of doing that?
So we've actually made such fantastic progress with the project so far. We built the very first module of the course with the help from the carpentries. So the team took the carpentries collaborative lessons development training, where we learned
Mm.
how to actually write courses together. And after we wrote the first module, our task was to go back, try and teach that module to actual people, and based on the feedback, adjust what the curriculum looks like and implement for future models. So what we've done now is to build the first part, pilot the material, complete our collaborative lessons development training, and now we're in the process of refining the rest of the materials based on the feedback that we have.
That was actually my question, whether you work with organizations such as the carpentries. But the answer is yes, you are working with them. Yeah.
Yes, so they contribute to the equipping, should I say, of the people who build the curriculum. Not that we're in a partnership where they have to build alongside us. So they offer training to
Mm.
my team, who then go along to build based on the best practices that they've taught us, if that makes sense. Instead of partnering directly with the carpentries, I have a growing team. It's expanding, it's getting there, of people who collaborate on writing these lessons and trying to set up the pilot workshops and all of this. One thing that I would mention is that in this phase of the project, we're being extremely strategic about putting the work out there so people know that the material exists and that they can
Mm.
join the community. And one of the ways we're doing this is to attend conferences, not just in the UK, but also in Africa, where we can target people who are hungry for knowledge and who really want to co create this. And that conference is happening next week, which is exciting. We'll see.
You live in Nigeria and you create this course. Is this course then aimed at people in Africa or Nigeria as a starting point?
So, yeah, for a starting point, we're aiming to build the materials for people here in Africa and
Mm.
then expand based on what we're learning to use the materials for others. We had talked about this a lot during lesson development training, where we said, oh, research is a skill that literally anyone can be taught. And
Mm.
so we struggle to draw the personas to be specific people because the material is so useful for anyone, right? PhD students, aspiring researchers,
Mm.
citizen scientists, and all of these people. For now, we're trying to work with a smaller audience and then scale outwards after that.
And that is your strategic aspect of how you want to roll this out. So, what's this conference you're talking about then?
It's called Oscar Fest. It's Open Source Community Africa. So there's a group of people who work in open source in Africa, and every year they have this conference where everyone comes together from all the African countries, and we feel like
Mm.
it's one of the best places that we could possibly sell pre-seeds as an idea and hope to get more collaborators. Luckily, the SSI is funding our participation in that conference, which is really helpful.
Mm. Well, thanks for bringing us back to the SSI because we're talking about your fellowship. And is that one of the reasons that you applied for the SSI fellowship, sort of the funding? Or what were your motivations actually to go for it? Because you would have done that anyway, wouldn't you?
So last year, when I conceived the idea for this project, before then it
Mm.
wasn't called Precedes, it was just called an idea that Debs had. So I looked at the best way to run a project like this, and I figured that I needed some sort of support. So this is really, really strange, but timely in the best possible way. Right about when I was thinking of how to really get started with the project,
Mm.
I found the ad about the SSI fellowship and I thought, wow, okay, this is perfect. This gives me the access to a community of people who are in research and in research
Mm.
software. This gives me access to funds, to conferences, events, and that was really primarily my motivation for joining. Other than the fact that at RSE last year, I met a lot of SSI fellows who talked
Mm.
really well about their experience as fellows. And after RSE I can tell you for sure, Peter, if I hadn't applied for the SSI fellowship, I would just be an idiot.
No, I doubt that very much. So, how do you think that beyond the initial steps, the whole project is going to roll out?
We have this really rough timeline of the project. And one
Mm.
of the things I've been thinking about a lot, So personally, I had said that I could do XYZ within a 13-month timeline, but in reality, things always take much longer than you would
Hmm.
expect. So the flow of my project was supposed to go from the lessons development training, creating the first model, and then out of that first module, piloting it, creating the other 12 modules. There are 13 modules, and then expanding the reach of the community. But I'm actually finding that some steps have to come before the others. After,
Like?
so the order was supposed to go from piloting the materials, then
Hmm.
implementing the changes on the other 12. But the logical flow is to actually get more people on board. So then the process of implementing those changes and expanding the rest of the curriculum is much smoother. And it's not you creating something in a silo, but actually creating it with the people who would participate the most from it. So it has shifted from trying to just create one output to making a community of people who would create that output far beyond the timeline of 13-month
Hmm.
fellowship, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, I mean, you're wearing three hats now, Deborah. So being a nurse, an SSI fellow, and working for Open Life Science. And I wish you good luck with all of three.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. At some point, I might need more heads, should I?
But I think three is, more than most people wear. So, but good luck with that. From Nigeria to India, where we will find Jyoti Bhogal. A few years ago, I talked to Jyoti about her work in building a research software engineering association together with colleagues, the RSE Asia Association. Since then, and no surprise there, a lot has happened with RSE Asia. How the SSI Fellowship is going to help with all of that is something that Jyoti and I talked about in our little conversation next.
My name is Jyoti. I'm a trained statistician. I've worked as a software quality tester previously for clinical trial software, and I co founded the Research Software Engineering Asia Association in 2021. I have been working on the community building aspects of the research software community in Asia, and our community is now 100 members, and that's really glad. I'm really glad about that. And this year we also completed a milestone where we signed a memorandum of understanding with one of the biggest research and education network in Asia. Apart from that, I have been also been an open source contributor to different R and Python language programming language projects, and you
Hmm.
can find more about me through my website or through LinkedIn, which is my most active social media, and I'm also available on Blue Sky and Mastodon. Besides, I am an SSI Fellow 2025, about which we will be talking today.
Exactly. And you are based in India, aren't you? And
Yes,
we've seen each other in the UK, actually, when you
yes,
went to the Research Software
yeah.
Engineering Conference. But whereabout in India are you?
I'm based in Pune. It is a city on the west side of India. It is inside the state called Maharashtra, and it's close to the Mumbai city, just for reference.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, people might be familiar with Mumbai, I guess.
Yeah.
So the SSI Fellowship is what we're talking about today. Maybe you can tell the listeners what it is that made you apply for the SSI Fellowship in the first place.
The first and the most important reason is that the cohort or the group of people that the SSI fellowship connects anyone with is quite diverse, and it gives you connections across globe. Given that I started the research software engineering Asia community after having seen how the growth of the RSC community has been in UK as well as US and say also Australia. So applying to this fellowship for my RSC work for Asia made a lot of sense. Besides, I am also one of the four international fellows in the 2025 cohort, where overall 27 fellows were selected. So it's quite competitive and quite prestigious as well. I can say this even more confidently now because I've also reviewed the applications for 2026 cohort, and while this felt like a full circle from being an applicant myself last year to being a reviewer this year, I have realized how critical the review processes are, and there is a lot of thought that goes behind the review process, and that makes it even more special. I also wanted to join the fellowship as it supports the fellows with a grant budget that they can use rather flexibly. It can be used for a number of things like organizing events, for attending themselves, for, say, giving away some cash prize during some competition or raffle that you run for the project that you're doing. And these are just examples. Because of the flexibility that it supports, I like the format of the fellowship quite a lot, and I went ahead and applied. Something that I really want to share is that I had been working with different open science communities, research software communities, R language and Python language communities since almost last 5 years. All of this was online, and however, connecting in person gives you a lot more sense of connection and belonging to the RSE community, which is something which was supported by this fellowship. And it has been a great year for me since being selected into the fellowship in January 2025. And having collaborated with the people that I had known for, say, 4 to 5 years, and now that I got to meet them in person, it has given me a lot more maturity and also helped in developing the RSC community in Asia.
You mentioned something that I think is quite important for listeners to understand, is that you are from India, and I know that there are other fellows from outside the UK,
Yeah.
because the SSI fellowship initially started as a fellowship for people in the UK,
Yeah.
but they expanded it to people outside the UK. There are limited places, but you can apply for it, and I think that's quite important.
Just one thing I wanted to
Yeah.
add over there. Last year was the first time that the fellowship was expanded to 4 fellows, 4 international fellows from 3 international fellows that happened earlier.
All right.
So since last year, it's 4 international fellows, and it is continuing that way ahead as well.
Okay, so it increased the number of fellows from outside the UK. So from your perspective as an applicant, but also as an interviewer and reviewer,
Yes.
is the process of reviewing applications for people outside the UK different than to people inside the UK?
No, not at all. The processes are not at all different. Before the application starts, there are some launch webinars where SSI has a webinar where they bring along fellows from past, and they explain about their personal fellowship experiences, how they applied to it, what they did during their fellowship, what the whole community is like, what are the things that are essential in an application, what actually are the objectives of SSI. So all these things are communicated. So the review process and application process for everyone is the same.
Okay, so let's go over to your application. And what is that all about? What is your fellowship about?
My fellowship is about a qualitative research study of the landscape of research software engineering in Asia across different universities, research labs, and more. During this study, I am running a survey and I'm also doing interviews. So the survey is for people who are working in different universities, research labs, colleges, and more, with the skills that a research software engineer does, which is having some research skills and having some programming and software and coding skills. However, the job is not really unified. The job title is not really unified. People work under various job titles, and in fact, RSC is not really a job title here in Asia. People work with the same skills but under a lot of different titles. So one of my objectives has been firstly to understand what all are the different, say, job roles under which people work as RSCs, what are the avenues they get to connect with each other. So my fellowship project is mostly around a survey and analysis of the survey, and doing a community network analysis, and also interviewing the head of institutions from different universities and colleges over here.
You mentioned Asia, and
Yes,
Asia is a huge area.
it is.
So, I mean, India itself is a huge country with over 1 billion people in there. So, are there any particular geographical areas you focus on, or do you that across the board of all of Asia?
For me, reaching out to such a huge community would be difficult. It is through APAN, which is Asia Pacific Advanced Network, which is a group of research and education network. It consists of a number of universities within it. So I reached out to them, and the network is quite widespread across Asia. So yeah, that's how it has been. I have been in communication with them to spread out about my survey, And also, when I say that I interview heads of institutions, it has been mostly these members of different APAN working groups, which includes application working group, certain discipline into working groups like communications, internet network, telecommunication, telemedicine, agriculture, and so on.
It's not restricted to India, it's
No,
going beyond India. Okay.
yes, yes, definitely.
What do you hope to achieve with the survey? What do you think the next steps would be after you finish the survey?
One of the steps would be to have a visual representation of the community, a network analysis graph. This would be through one of the programming languages, R or Python. So it would give a picture of what the community looks like, where are they based. Besides, I would also share my case study report with SSI, with APAN, to share about the state of research software engineers, people working under different job titles, like it could be software developers, programmers, PhD fellows, researchers, all of these who program in their day-to-day job. So one of the major outcome would be having a picture of a community network graph of these people. Besides, I would also like to present a case study of my observations from the survey as well as the interviews, and would like to develop. Now, this is quite a long term vision. We would like to develop a sort of a career path for people in RSC skills. I'm quite aware that in UK there is a quite balanced career path where people go from junior RSC to RSC to senior RSC and so on. So there is quite a clarity about what people should do in order to upskill themselves, in order to get promotions, in order to work on various projects, maybe within their institution or even across different institutions collaboratively. Yeah, so that's the idea.
So, talking about career paths, what do you think the impact will be on your career, this SSI fellowship? What do you hope to get out of that for yourself?
The impact has already been quite vast in the sense that I get to communicate with people from various backgrounds, various digital research technical professionals, which is now the term. Yeah, so I get to connect with people globally. It could be in the open software community, it could be in the open data community, and it's also in the open science community. So interaction with these people, and also not limiting my projects to just one region, but also exchanging ideas globally and recognizing the gaps in these structures. This is something that I hope to get out from my fellowship work.
Now, back to the UK, and let's meet up with my last guest for this episode, Sangeeta Bathia. Sangeeta is at Imperial College in London, and her focus is on public health. People in the UK may remember that Imperial College in particular played a significant role in modelling disease, in particular during the COVID years. And as we all know, how quickly we respond to health crises has a direct impact on population health and all our well-being. With all of that in mind, Sangeeta has been looking at one particular aspect of public health and disease control, as you will hear now.
My name is Sangeeta. I am currently a research fellow at Imperial College London, and my beat is generally public health. So I work in public health, data science. I've been working in outbreak response and things like that.
But you're also a Software Sustainability Institute fellow. As of this year, I understand?
That is right, yeah.
That's exactly what I would like to talk about. First of all, what made you go for the fellowship?
It's a little bit of a long story. So,
Wow.
all right, I'll try to keep it short. So, my journey into science actually has been quite unconventional because I did not do my PhD and stuff like that. I was working in the industry as a software engineer, but I was always very academically oriented. So, I actually left my software engineering position and did my master's with an intention to do a PhD, which I did later. But you can take a girl out of software, but you can't take software out of the girl. So the software ethos always stayed with me, and that has been a part of my scientific identity. So I am a public health scientist, but I am also a software engineer. So that has always been my kind of professional space that I have occupied, not necessarily an RSC, but a scientist who knew a lot about software And then when I came across this fellowship by Software Sustainability Institute, it looked very interesting, and I felt like I will be joining a network of like-minded people who are deeply interested in software.
Mm.
And the categories that they had really appealed to me because they were talking about, using software to inform policy, to direct evidence. So that was the category in which my application fell. So the application form itself was so friendly. I think it was one of the friendliest forms I have filled. So it seemed like a very friendly community. So that's what I motivated me, and I applied, and I luckily I got it.
Public health and software don't always go easily together, do they? You said that you came from a software engineering background and went into public health. So what has your experience been then as a software engineer in public health, and how accepted is software and software development in public health environments?
I'm lucky to work in a place where a lot of emphasis has been placed on good software. So,
Mm,
I mean, if you're doing science now, you cannot not do software, right? You have to go
indeed.
write code every day of your life. At Imperial College, in my department, we have a very good research software engineering team who produce like really good output. So within the sphere, within the bubble in which I move, there
Mm,
has always been an emphasis on writing good software. Not everyone does it, and not everyone is fully aware of the best
mm,
practices, but it does form a driving force of the evidence that we produce. So, for example, during COVID-19, I'm sure a lot of your audience also would have heard of such a lot of work that was coming out of Imperial.
oh yeah.
We
Mm,
did our paper on the impact of COVID-19, potential impact and the trajectory, and that was based on a individual-based model that our department had written. So, yeah, software has always been and is an important part of what drives our research.
mm.
It is really important in the bubble in which I move.
Okay, let's get back to the fellowship. So what was your application about?
My application was about a very specific problem in the domain. So, if you cast your mind back to COVID-19 times, which I'm sure nobody wants to, but let's just think about it a
Yeah.
little bit. So, there were a lot of controversies about stuff like should we close schools? Will it help? Like, there were no definitive answers to questions like these. And that was really surprising because school closure, it was not the first time we were considering school closure as a measure to control an outbreak.
Mm,
It has always been a part of plans to mitigate public health crises like flu and stuff like that. So what motivated me was like, why do we not have better answers about this question?
mm,
And one of the reasons is that we do not actually collect very good data on what we are doing. So when an outbreak happens, for example, COVID-19 was of especially big scale, but usually things don't get that bad. So let's say you have a local measles outbreak or a local, I don't know, some other kind of food-borne illness outbreak. Locally, it'll be decided, let's close down the school.
right.
But we do not have a record of that. We don't store that information properly anywhere. So if I wanted to go and look back and ask the question, did that help in any way? I need to know what was done, who did it, how long it was done for. But because we don't store this information, we cannot answer these questions effectively. So my question was, okay, let's design tools to collect this data proactively. But I'm a software engineer. I can design a software system like that will allow you to do it. But
Yeah.
that's not what the problem is about, right? You need what are the barriers? What is the willingness among people who will collect this data? What is stopping them from doing it now? So my fellowship proposal was to get these people in a room and have them discussing with each other, what do we need to do in order to make this happen? Like what is stopping this from? So my proposal was to organize a workshop where we'll get these people together.
That sounds quite a challenge, to be honest. First of all, how do you get to people to get them to the workshop? But actually, even before then, how do you know that you're talking to the right person? I mean, how do you find the people that you need to talk to in order to collect the data and let them collect the data?
Yeah, it was an interesting challenge, but luckily I had worked during the COVID-19 pandemic a lot in outbreak
Yeah.
response. So I was a little bit informed about the literature, who is working in this space. Something that was very important for me was to reach out to people outside the modeling community. So obviously I'm an infectious disease modeler. I
Yeah.
know a lot of infectious disease modelers, but we are not, we are the people who consume the data to
Mm.
analyze it, but we are not going to be able to solve this problem. So I was lucky to know some people and then reach out to my network and ask them to recommend people. So I was able to invite experts from WHO, from UKHSA. I got a really good colleague sharing our insights. So yeah, it was just like a network effect, like asking people who would be a good person to speak to.
Mm. The application was last year, and I think you started your fellowship this year. Has the workshop actually happened yet?
Yes, it happened in June.
Oh, right. It happened in
Yeah.
June. So what
Yep.
happened then? How did it go?
It was a very good workshop. I got a chance to meet a lot of people, discuss a lot of different perspectives about what kind of data are useful, how do we integrate, for example, qualitative insights into analysis, how are these data used. I was very excited to find out that, for example, evaluating the effect of what is called PHSM, so public health social measures,
Mm.
is really important for a lot of public health agencies, including the UK HSA, not just like whether this worked or not, but also what unintended consequences it had. So I got a chance to talk about these things. Now, the next step to this is to then write this down somewhere, which I'm working on, and then try and secure some money to do some work. So that's your plan.
That was my question, actually. What follows the workshop? So you're writing something up,
Yeah.
but the data or the feedback that you got from the workshop, what else is it that you can do? And are there any conclusions that came from it?
A very simplistic conclusion was that these data are really important. So everyone agrees that it's really important to collect these data. It was very interesting because I got a chance to talk to people from different disciplines as well. So we had this idea that we need to build momentum in the community to have an effort to be in a position to proactively collect this data when the next bad thing happens. What I was talking about earlier, so for example, I don't know if you're aware of this Oxford Government Tracker, which was a big project to collect this kind of data that I'm talking about during COVID. It was run by folks at Oxford, and the PI from there, she joined us at the workshop. And she's not an infectious disease modeler, she's a social political scientist. So she had a very different perspective on the problem. And one of the big conclusions from the workshop was that we should have more frequent conversations between disciplines to bring together these kind of different ways of thinking about a problem. But anyway, I think if the definitive thing to do, the concrete thing to do was to build momentum by the kind of things that we have planned to publish soon, so that this becomes a priority for people who actually fund science and they recognize its importance. So it was the first step towards a big problem. It is a big problem.
So the funding is for what exactly then? You talked about the funding a few times.
So the workshop was just like a first step, right? So if you really want to build these systems and to get people together, you actually need a lot of money to do that. For example, I am planning to write like a fellowship proposal around this idea so that I can secure money from funders to carry out this research activity. I think it's very important. It is a matter now of convincing other people that it is important too and that I can deliver it. That's the kind of funding that I'm talking about.
Yeah, because we are really talking about almost like a national response to crisis. You might want to start with a pilot, maybe in a school or maybe a handful of schools, but then you want to expand to a wider area and possibly nationally.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So we want to have like a pilot thing where how do we collect this data? Experiment with different modes of data collection. So we can have, like, for example, crowdsourcing, or we can have people dedicating to collecting this data, or use, LLMs to scan news media reports for us. And so all of these different options on the table. But we need to try things, actually do things and see this one works and this one doesn't.
So in terms of the fellowship, you've actually done now what you said you would do in the application. How do you think the fellowship actually helped you to do all of that?
The fellowship was very important. So for the first thing is, of course, it gave me the funding, but also it allowed me to tap into a big network. That was another thing that helped me with. It gives me the credibility. So I go out to people and I say I'm an SSI fellow, and that gives more, I think it gives more weight to my request. So there's a prestige, there's the network effect, there's the support as well. All of these things help me.
I think all three, Deborah, Jyoti and Sangeeta, summed up the benefits of being an SSI fellow very well. Yes, there is the financial support, but money alone only gets you so far. What you need in order to get a project started or keep it going is a network of people you can draw on. And with hundreds of SSI fellows, all coming with different expertise and experiences, you'll get that in spades. On top of that, there's the prestige that comes with a fellowship, and this may be what it takes to open the doors and talk to people that can help with your project. But mostly, the SSI fellowship gives you the chance to work on something you really care about and get some support for it. And for that alone, I think it's worth considering. The fellowship is continuing, and as a matter of fact, there's a new round of applications drawing to a close right now in December 25, and I look forward to see who the new fellows for 2026 will be. Maybe it's going to be you. And look out for the announcement in the next round next year. You'll find the links in the show notes. As I said at the beginning, this is the last English language episode for this season and this year. If you fancy an episode in German about the new and shiny Jupyter supercomputer that went online at the research center in Jülich this year, you can find out all about it next week. Last but not least, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the Software Sustainability Institute for their support. Being an SSI fellow myself, it's fair to say that without the support from the SSI, this podcast wouldn't have been possible. So thanks again to the SSI, and thanks, of course, to all of you who've been listening, and I hope will continue to listen to Code for Thought. I'll be taking a short break over the holidays and will be back with a new season in February 2026. And there'll be a lot to celebrate that season, not least because Code for Thought will be 5 years old then. So I do hope you tune in. In the meantime, put your feet up, relax a little bit, and enjoy the holidays. Oh, time's up. See you next time. But before I forget, this podcast is covered by the Creative Commons license. See ya.